Hello, I'm going to be doing my presentation on Estonian folk music, which is one of the Baltic states and has a pretty fascinating history to it. So, to start off and give some cultural context to what folk music is, Estonian music and tradition was traditionally passed down orally, and this would continue on in like some way, shape, or form throughout like folk music as well. But it was only he up until it was only in the 19th century that um, Estonians began to move their works to be written, and a national identity began to be developed. Their traditions were codified, and you can also see during this time a lot of development in folk music, in the actual instruments being played, both instruments being introduced and instruments being changed. And in general, just there was a major cultural shift. This would also be when song festivals would be begun and to be held, which would end up becoming quite relevant for folk music in particular and Estonia's history. Estonia would declare independence in 1918 and obtain it in 1920, but this was short lived as during World War II they would lose that independence, primarily due to Soviet occupation, but it wasn't only the Soviets that occupied Estonia, it was also the Germans and other Axis powers. But at the end of the war, it was Soviet occupation that kept them away from independence. This, however, did lead into a revolution which surrounded music, in fact. Um, when After the war ended, Soviets were surprisingly alright with Estonians creating their own culture and like expressing themselves how they want. Uh, Soviets allowed song festivals and just Estonian music to continue, but wanted them to use as propaganda tools, so a lot of lyrics would be changed to be pro Soviet. This would actually be used against them, as a lot of Estonian songwriters would sneak in pro Estonian messages into their songs, but the intent was still to be used as Soviet propaganda. However, this would eventually culminate in the singing revolution in the 1980s, well, 1988 to 1991, where Estonians would use their own music to protest Soviet rule. There'd be a lot of folk music was the main way that this would be used. A lot of folk songs being written and performed in protest of Soviet rule. The most notable one is Wake of Baltic Countries, or the Baltic Way, which was a 375-mile long human chain that went through all three Baltic states. And everyone in the chains sung Wake Up Baltic Countries out of protest. This was not what won the singing revolution, because Estonia would obtain their independence at the end of the singing revolution, but it was a major turning point for the revolution. And in fact, we can listen to a little bit of it now. This specific video has all three countries singing, but it's time stamped to be just Estonia is singing.
Siin sajandeid heideldes tüidab riiksomanuisse kuid tornides löömas on kellaajal merd haaramas vabaduspüü sootust ja elu kaitseda kolmõne virguvad need. Ärgake Baltimaa, ärgake Baltimaa, Leedumaa, Lätimaa, veel Eestimaa. Ärgake Baltimaa, ärgake Baltimaa, Leedumaa, Lätimaa, veel Eestimaa.
I'll be cutting off there. Sorry. So, For the instruments used in Estonian folk music, there's more than just these three used, but these three are notable instruments. The most important is the cannel, which is a type of psaltery, which is a family of Baltic instruments that share similarities with pluck-sivers. This is a chordophone, and they're the most significant instrument in Estonian and Baltic music as a whole. They've gone through a lot of changes since the 19th century, with modern cannels differing by being larger in size, having more strings, like 5 to 12 for the original cannel versus 17 to 22 for the new cannel, alongside some other changes to the construction of the instrument. But it's generally just one of the most important instruments for Estonian music. Another instrument is the concertina. It doesn't actually originate from the Baltic region, but it often appeared in Estonian ensembles alongside the cannel. It's an aerophone, and it shares similarities to the accordion. You can even see the visual similarities, as it's the middle instrument. The final one I'll be talking about, though it is certainly not the last one, is the bowed lyre. It originates from Sweden and is also a chordophone. Um, it's also known, in fact, as the Swedish cannel. It's a variation of the Swedish harpa, to be specific. It's primarily played in Western Estonia and on Estonia's islands. It actually creates a melody of its own when it's played. Not all Estonian folk music has instruments, though, as a lot of it are entirely choral and don't feature any instruments, or just, fully a cappella. As for some musical instruments, Estonian folk music has a regular rhythm using a variety of tempos from slow to medium fast. The tempo changes kind of depends on the purpose of music. Dance music will be on the faster side, while music played in ceremonies will be on the slower side. The timbre is usually bright, warm, and vibrant, and is usually more high pitched, especially for singers. Again, not always though. Estonian folk music has a variety of different timbres, but a lot of the ones I saw had those. The harmonies are usually consonant and are quite pleasing. And there's a variety of textures, usually either polyphonic or homophonic, but some choral music will actually be monophonic. Again, choral music is a notable part of Estonian folk music. Just, yeah. This is a bit different from the example, from the Baltic way. In that it's slower, it has a different sounding timbre, and it doesn't actually have any vocals, which is why I wanted to show it. It has a different timbre than like the bright and airy, no, the bright and vibrant and warm timbre of the prior song. But that's also part of why I wanted to show it, just to show that while a lot of Estonian folk music will have a brighter timbre, not all of them do. As this one, as a song is a lot, quieter. Not quieter, but like more mellow. Um, and these are my sources. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a nice day.